America.
the small. Lay a big hit and pass a kick the ball. This game is for us all. From Seattle down toward the Keys, this game is you, this game is me. Cast dogs and steer, be the tree. This game is America, so sing it loud with me. College football forever. College football forever. Downtown LA, Starkville sit. 1 week you're up next, take a dip. Run the rock or let it rip. This game is America. All say, can you sing it with me?
We just stepped on her face with a hot-tail broken across her nose. Whoa, Nelly!
College football forever. College football forever. College football forever. College football forever.
College football is a year-round discussion with these two. Here's JC and Morgan. Mike Morgan of ESPN and JC Shurburtt of 24/7 Sports have you covered, beginning right now.
It is a Monday morning after the storm that was yesterday afternoon. Welcome, everybody. Another installment, number 264. If you're scoring at home, it is JC and Morgan, and we welcome you once again to the show that is on campus 52 weeks out of the year. Yeah, don't think we're like going away after this whole playoff thing is over. We don't do that here. We find time to talk about the sport that we love so much, college football, throughout the season, and we'll continue to do so. He is JC Shurburtt. Our producer is Phil Molinax, the mad dog behind the scenes. I am Mike Morgan. We've got lots to get to. August 24th feels like a million years ago, and then again, it almost feels like yesterday. Remember, that was week 0, and people thought an epic upset took place when a top 10 Florida State team went down to Georgia Tech overseas in Dublin. Well, we later learned Florida State was woeful. Georgia Tech, a positive story. And the major storylines were still about to come. That was 3.5 months ago. And now 3.5 months later, we have our first ever 12-team bracket, 12-team playoff. Champ week came and went. Some entertaining games. I didn't think there were a whole lot of surprises, but many of the games were quite entertaining. And now we have the bracket to look forward to, and hopefully these will be entertaining games as well. A much-needed dose of controversy certainly came yesterday afternoon and was discussed ad nauseum. We will certainly touch on that. Take a look at some of the matchups. Take a look at some of the better stories throughout college football. JC, good morning. By the way, my background has been and will continue to be the Benz, the Dome here in Atlanta. You see that featured in the beautiful montage that JC put together. I think the one you had was 2017. Yeah, so here we are 7 years later, and that's where another national champion will be crowned in a matter of what? A little more than a month? Yeah, I'm still getting used to this new schedule. It's going to be really interesting. But anyway, with all that being said, good morning, JC, and good morning everybody out there tuning us in.
Good morning. Good to be with you today. Just can't express the sickness I have in my stomach over the field we got and the explanations that we got. I don't think this is anywhere close to the 12 best teams. I think the automatic bye, I was okay with it before I actually saw it. That's got to change. It's not a tournament. It's an invitational. I thought this committee was, kind of exposed the 4-team committees who had a much easier job. Really, 2 controversies in 10 years is not hard. And I think they just approached it like they did the 4-team playoff, which is something I talked about in the offseason that I was worried about. And gosh, I was right. So this is broken. It needs to be fixed. It sucks as a fan of college football. It's not real. It's fantasy thinking. Disney owning it or running it is probably a good thing, or having the rights, good thing, because this is some Mickey Mouse crap. And as the great Bobby Knight said, that's kind of an insult to Mickey Mouse. I was stunned. And everybody's got Bama fatigue, and I understand everybody's like, well, Bama, everybody's kind of happy, Bama didn't get in. Well, it could be your team next. And if you were being objective about it and just didn't hate Bama, you'd understand that there's no planet where Penn State, Indiana, SMU deserve to get in over Alabama. There's just no planet where that reality exists. If you want the 12 best teams, if you want to do an invitational, just tell the conferences to pick them, send them to you, sort them, and play it off. But this was egregiously horrible. I'm happy for the 12 fan bases that got in. But this is worse than what when the Big Ten Conference used to, make us all watch the Rose Bowl every New Year's, and we could never have a true championship game if one of those teams or a Pac-12 team or Pac-10 team was in it. It's worse than that. I'd rather them just the writers who are bad at their job voting in the AP poll to begin with. I'd rather them just vote and go back to that than this. This was 13 people who literally said this is because none of the other explanations make sense. None. Because, and I'll break all that down. Yes, we had straight schedule matters, but it doesn't. Head-to-head matters, but it doesn't. You look at the seeding, it could tell you head-to-head really doesn't matter in certain cases. It is like your parents used to tell you, because we said so. And if that's the case, just tell us. Don't BS everybody. We're smarter than that. We all live in a time where, 80% of the country understands the media in general is dishonest in all ways. And so you don't have to spit anything because we can see right through it. It was that bad of a selection process. I've seen some wonky NCAA tournaments in basketball. That's the gold standard compared to this, no matter who they've left out and put in over the years. That bunch, and I know they got an easier job, so to speak, with 68 instead of 12. But man, I'm stunned. I was absolutely stunned at the seeding. There's no planet where a Mountain West school ever needs to be the 3rd seed over Power 5 champions. There's no planet where we basically have 3 group of 5 schools because Indiana's got 16 players from James Madison last year on the roster.
Yeah.
So we basically have three G5s while there's really good teams sitting home. Penn State, so strength of schedule doesn't matter when the Nittany Lions are part of the conversation, and neither does head-to-head because they're 2 seeds ahead of Ohio State that beat them. I mean, where was that? I mean, Notre Dame didn't play a murderer's row. Penn State gets to 6, Notre Dame gets to 7. So what you're telling me is that loss to Northern Illinois bumped Notre Dame down a little bit. Well, then bad losses should matter, but they don't. Because if you look at how they explained away the higher-ranked SEC teams, those bad losses, Ole Miss and Bama, didn't matter because it was head-to-head. So what is it? It makes no sense. Clemson, okay, they're the 12 seed. SMU is the 11. They beat SMU. They're the ACC champs. SMU is not. And they played a tougher schedule with Georgia and South Carolina on the team. Then lost 1 game to Louisville. So they justified that with not only because we said so, but if you pinned them down, they probably say, well, Clemson lost to Louisville and Clemson, SMU beat Louisville at Louisville. And for the life of me, I don't understand this committee's insistence on making Louisville the gold standard which everything's evaluated by, because they put Louisville at number 16 based on a win over Clemson. When other schools are beating other teams and moving up. So I just, people know I'm a South Carolina guy. That is the least of my concerns with this. Because I think that, if you're picking the 4th SEC team, you can, that argument's like Waffle House hash browns. You can have it 39 different ways. And at the end of the day, if the head-to-head matters, Gamecocks should be out. Bama and Ole Miss should be in, or Ole Miss. But the fact they threw SMU in there is stunning. And then I look at Indiana and I look at Penn State and I went and broke down those teams and who they played and their strength of schedule. And man, it's light. It's light. Ohio State and Oregon deserve to be in. Absolutely. They kind of they challenged themselves. They played, it wasn't a heavy schedule, wasn't an SEC schedule, but they played good teams and they won enough games. And obviously Oregon's undefeated. But those other 2 are bogus, right? And then so you look at the bracket. On what planet does Penn State deserve to get SMU in the freezing cold, a team from Dallas, and then they go to the bowl game and, guess who they get to play? Boise freaking State, who's a good team with a great player. But, man, you're telling me the team that struggled mightily to beat the Wyoming Cowboys should get a bye, and then that's who Penn State has to go through? Meanwhile, Notre Dame, if they are fortunate enough to get past Indiana, and I think they will, they got to go play Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. Ohio State has to go play Oregon again in the Rose Bowl. Texas gets Arizona State in Tempe, which probably, or in Glendale, which is near Tempe. I mean, that's probably not fair either, because that, as much as the Longhorns travel, that's still, Arizona State doesn't even have to go anywhere. So the whole thing is egregiously unfair, dumb, not real, fake, Disney-ish, but not even a good plot line like the bad Disney movies, like The Black Cauldron from the 80s. That movie sucked. I'm beside myself, Mike. I just can't, I can't wrap my head around this thing at all. And the lack of respect for the best conference in college football. And Kirby Smart mentioned it after the game. People thought he kind of called out Sankey. There's not a team in the country that's been through what Georgia's been through this year.
Yeah.
And hat tip to them. But nobody had to play at Texas, at Ole Miss, and at Alabama. Nobody.
No. Okay. I like that you emptied out your passion bucket right there in the first segment. A lot to chew on there.
I emptied the chamber.
No, I love it. I love it. We haven't even gotten to the JC5 yet. This is beautiful. Where do I start? Young Skywalker? Okay. I'm not going to come off the top rope and blast the SMU over Alabama decision. I made a pact. JC, I made a pact really at the beginning of the year that I was so excited that we went from, look, you and I are old enough to remember when two teams randomly were selected off of AP coaches poll, UPI polls, and wound up playing for a national title. We're old enough to remember split champions. We're old enough to remember a BYU team playing a 6-win Michigan team for the right to claim a national championship. We're old enough to remember 20 years of the BCS where people convinced you one played two, but based on what? The same type of nonsense we just saw the rankings spit out here. 12 is better than 4, is better than 2, is better than what we had for 100 years of a mythical national champion. So let me start with a little positive vibes before I dive into the pool of negativity. What you just did, and I talked about this on one of our other shows on the Chief Sports Network, what you just did was open up Pandora's box, because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. What's going to happen is Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, they're going to be real quiet. You notice I didn't see any interviews with them after when the committee made the decisions. Now, Tony Petitti should be happier than a pig in slop. I can't imagine he would have much to gripe about other than like the seating, which I'm with you. The seating makes no sense. And here's what I can guarantee you without any inside information, just common sense. This whole seating setup where a Boise State gets the 3 and an Arizona State gets the 4, say goodbye. It's going to be what it's going to look like, if not next year, 2 years from now, at the max. Oregon will be the 1 seed. Georgia will be the 2 seed. Texas will be the 3 seed. Penn State will be the 4 seed. And we'll go 1 through 12 based on merit. We do it in every other sport. I know what the justification of this was. There is true paranoia that the relevance of conference championship games is in peril. As I watched another SEC championship game, and I've been to several, and I've watched every one of them, either on TV or in person, that game ain't going anywhere. I know a lot of you think it is, and a lot of you want it to. It's not going anywhere. And there's no lack of motivation. Texas was already in the playoff. Georgia was already in the playoff. This goes back to, the same national guys who've been telling you an expanded playoff is bad because teams won't be motivated for certain games. There was no lack of motivation in that game if you watched. If you're paying attention, there's no lack of motivation in rivalry week. There's no lack of motivation in week 9, week 4, nothing. So they're not going away. But you do need to seed accordingly. But what you just did when I say Pandora's box, here's what's going to happen. The SEC and the Big Ten are going to get AQs. You just opened the door to not 1 AQ, but 4. Pretty soon you will never see those 2 leagues get fewer than 4 automatic qualifiers because these are the titans of the sport. You mentioned ESPN runs things. These 2 conferences run things more than any TV network. And they can always find another TV partner. College football's never been more. The ratings this year were off the frigging moon. I mean, everything. Both pregame shows, ESPN and Fox, all the big noon kickoff, SEC on ABC, everything was off the so TV has a certain amount of power, but the real power brokers, the real guys that get it, it's not 5 families anymore. It's not the 5-family mafia analogy. It's 2. And those 2, and Petitti's smart enough to know that the shoe could easily be on the other foot where the Big Ten winds up with only 3 and looking at an SMU team with a strength of schedule in the 60s that doesn't have a win over a single top 25 team gets in over one of their brethren. Just so happened it happened to Greg Sankey's SEC this year. It could easily happen to Tony Petitti's Big Ten a year from now. That's not going to be tolerated. I said this last week, JC, and I will continue from the top of the mountaintop. I'm telling you right now, what you did was basically set up a scenario where those two gentlemen are going to get in a room and say, never freaking again. Do I have a major outrage over a 3-loss SEC team not getting in? Not really. Do I think Alabama has a better resume? Yes. Do I think Alabama's a better team? Yes. Would they be a touchdown or more favored in Vegas? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Do I think, to go back to the other argument, somebody said something really interesting, and it's a great line. It's not 100% accurate, but it's a great line. Someone said, and I can't remember where I read this, where Greg Sankey bet on the wrong horse, that South Carolina would have solved a lot of these arguments. I agree for many reasons of those 3-loss SEC teams. If we did this the way we do basketball, and we put a major emphasis on not just great wins, but bad losses, and we have a much greater emphasis on road games, road wins. There are a lot of teams that are really good at home, but they're paper champions. The moment you get them off their home field, they turn pretty mediocre. And there you had a South Carolina team that won 4 games on the road and didn't have a single bad loss. Their worst loss was to an 8-win LSU team with a lot of mitigating circumstances, I might add. But the committee set up weeks ago, not the penultimate poll, the poll before that. Is there a word for that, by the way? The third to last? I know what the second to last is, the penultimate. Maybe we can invent one here on JC and Morgan, since we already have our own glossary. That poll basically set the stage where, not Greg Sankey, the committee said Alabama's their one team that's got hope. And then he doubled down and said the teams that don't play really can't move over one another. So in other words, Carolina beating a Clemson team that wound up being the ACC champion, they could have beat them 1,000-0, and it wasn't going to move the meter, according to Ward Manuel and his unfit 58-long suit. So there's a lot of issues there for obvious reasons. But I go back to this too, and I'll add one more metric, that if you don't put this in the fold, you're not doing it right. And that is not just strength of schedule, which they clearly, I don't want to say they ignored it entirely, because they didn't. All right. I mean, there are teams with more losses ranked ahead of teams with fewer losses. It's not purely based on win-loss, but it's overwhelmingly weighted to win-loss. This is, every year we have Phil Steele on in the offseason. I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up well, because I've got a kind of a fancy background there. That's one of my things I printed out at the beginning of the year from Phil Steele. And what that, and I damn it, JC, I practically laminated the thing. That's how important I thought it was. I mean, this is in a laminated folder. Like, I didn't just print it and, put a paper clip on it. I put it behind plastic. I treated it like a work of art, because I knew it was going to be important for the season. What is it, Mike? What is it? What is it that you went out of your way to put in a laminated sheet of paper? Phil ranked 1 through 16 every SEC school's strength of conference schedule. You've got to do this. It's so important, because, yes, the Big Ten plays 9 and the SEC plays 8, but there is a chasm. There's a Grand Canyon difference between, for example, this year, what Oklahoma, Mississippi State, and South Carolina played versus Missouri, Texas, and Tennessee. There's a huge difference between, and this is what Kirby was getting at, and I don't blame him for being pissed. How do you give the team that's been that dominant, have them go on the road at Georgia, at Texas, at Ole Miss? Now, I get it. Like, there's always some bit of unpredictability, right? Like, did anybody predict the Gamecocks would have a chance at a 10-win season this year? Not many. How many predicted that? I'm trying to think who would be the biggest disappointment. There really weren't that many, honestly. Kentucky. Okay. Did anybody think Kentucky would be as bad as they were? No.
Probably not.
But for the
Auburn too. Most people thought
Auburn
had them winning 8. Yeah, because they had 5 straight home games to start the year.
Good point. Yeah, Auburn on second year under Hugh Freeze, they'd get it going, even though they didn't have a quarterback, and that was certainly concerning. But for the most part, you can kind of predict who the big dogs are, and there's a huge difference. Texas's path to Atlanta versus Georgia's. Are you kidding me? It's not even close. Indiana's path in the Big Ten compared to Ohio State's. Not apples to apples. And SMU's path compared to half the friggin' ACC, not nearly as big. I mean, this is why I thought SMU had a chance to have a very good year, because I looked at their conference schedule and I said, oh my goodness. And there it is. Phil Steele's got that too. 17 teams in the ACC. There's SMU, 14th in the strength of schedule within the league. So if you don't consider these things, and you don't look at those when you're talking about data points, data point. Well, what data points are you looking at when you ignore things like road wins, bad losses, strength of conference schedule? How are you running this thing if you don't consider those things? So look, SMU's a great story. I don't want to hate on SMU. Look, I'll be pulling for the ponies, okay? But no, they did not have the resume, and simply put, what they did was, to go back to your analogy, caveman logic, unga bunga, 2 less than 3. That's basically what it came down to. And one last thing. I'm sorry. I know I've pontificated long enough.
No.
Last point. You know damn well when Clemson had a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter and SMU didn't look like they belonged on the same field, that committee room with Ward sucking on his Perriers of 13 people with their reclining chairs and remote controls and not so much as a notepad or a number 2 pencil, when they were watching that and it was a 17-point lead in the fourth, they had Alabama in. You'll never convince me otherwise. But because SMU made it competitive, by the way, there was a blatant face mask call that was not called a Klubnik. That's a game-changing call that's not made.
One. Yeah, that was
just
terrible.
Egregious. But because it was competitive, you decided SMU with a loss and no top 25 wins whatsoever. Let's put them in there over the 3-loss Alabama team. Again, I'm not going to feel sorry for Alabama. Yes, they blew it. The Oklahoma game did them in. It 100% did. It was one of those games that popped up on the schedule, and you're like, well, Alabama will smoke them, and they got worked over. They didn't just lose. They lost. They looked bad doing it. But SMU's resume, as good of a story as it is, and hey, look, I'm on team Kevin Jennings, and I love their coach, and they got athletes. They're not just a feel-good story. They went in the portal. They brought a ton of guys from Miami. They're a legitimate team, but that resume does not speak to one of the top at-large bids, and I will stop there for now.
Agreed there. And, it's like head-to-head. See, with the South Carolina thing, head-to-head mattered, to the committee. Maybe it was Sankey pushing it. I have no idea. I have no proof of that. You'd think he'd want his teams in, no matter what, no matter who it is. But, if you go by head-to-head with South Carolina, Ole Miss, Bama, obviously the Gamecocks were 0-2. They lost those games a long time ago. But they also lost by 2 points at Alabama, okay? Just like SMU, they came back on Alabama's home field. And so here we go. SMU gets credit by playing it close. But South Carolina was afforded no opportunity. And then they shut it all down with that whole notion of, no teams could move up or down. Well, if you're evaluating the body of work, I'll take the Gamecocks out of it. I'll recuse myself from that argument. Well, so Alabama's win over Georgia, who's the SEC champs, who beat Texas twice,
right?
Who you weren't going to drop out under any circumstances, and once with a backup quarterback. So you're just going to discount that win over the Dogs? So, and if you want to just say, JC, take the Gamecocks out of it again. Well, Ole Miss also beat that team that beat Texas. So how does Georgia? Because it's hard in college football to beat a team twice. I mean, that.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It's not like the NFL. I mean, but in the NFL, it's hard to beat them 3 times because they play twice in the division. But so that didn't boost Ole Miss's resume, because recently recently, or mid-November, they beat Georgia by 18 on their home field. So it's like for some teams, bad losses matter. I mean, Ohio State gets punished. It's just kind of hard for me, when AD at Michigan's sitting there, and you sort of see the teams they screw, and the teams that they prop up, and it's just kind of weird to me. But anyway, I don't think that's a big. I think I'm just being paranoid there. But Ohio State gets completely screwed. Has to play a very tough Tennessee team in the first round. They can't stop the run, and Tennessee runs it all over the place because they lost to Michigan, right? Well, so Unga Bunga, 2 loss better. Well, Penn State's got 2 losses, and their best win is Illinois. Good team, not a great team at home. Their second best wins over Minnesota by a point in Minneapolis. That's it. And so then you're going to punish Ohio State for losing a rivalry game they shouldn't have, and then a 1-point loss at who you think's the number 1 in the country, but they're 8th, right? So that bad loss affected the Buckeyes, but Notre Dame's bad loss, I guess, affected them in terms of being behind Penn State, but not below Ohio State. So that doesn't make any sense. Penn State being 6th and having Josh Pate described it as a water slide into the semis. How does that stack up? I mean, are you giving them credit for winning or for winning the tiebreaker against Indiana? And they're really good because they've made the championship game. I just don't get it. And I think another part of it too, and this is legit. I'll get off my rant about them. I will close the rant by saying this is one of the worst things I've ever seen in college football as far as a deciding body. I mean, this lens. This does not bat down any sort of conspiracy theories that are always floating around this sport, bias, whatever. And you mentioned the Big Ten and SEC, and I'm going to stop coupling those two things together because the only thing the Big Ten has on the SEC is money. And money should not be power. And so those should not determine 4 spots in the playoff because your record is pretty. That's a beauty contest. That's gymnastics. In beauty contests and gymnastics and reality TV shows, we get together with a judge and they go, oh, well, this is prettier than that. And that's a 1 point. Yeah, we'll score it this way because it's just their opinion. It's about voting for the freaking Oscars or the Heisman. We may as well just have that. Let's have some committee. Who's the winner of the big contest? There's nothing to do with competing or winning or resume or anything. It's just a beauty contest. And its beauty, as we know, is in the eye of the beholder. And it needs to change. So the Big Ten, they needed to have 2 teams in this year because that league, there were so many teams that were down. Ward Manuel literally was like, well, Indiana beat Michigan and they beat Washington and they beat Nebraska. Oh, God. Murderer's Row, man. Come on. So I just think that it's just like one of these things, not like the other. And then the truth came out a couple of weeks ago when they asked about strength of schedule, and he tried to sit there and say, we did consider it. No, you didn't. Cause you go look at it's only ESPN who has the higher. Anyway. So, when he said these teams just sort of can play the schedule they're given. Okay. Well, if that's the philosophy, then why in the hell did we go to 12 to begin with? And why did most of the SEC, when they said playoff expansion is coming, Mike, they started scheduling up a bunch of good non-conference games. Alabama mentioned it. The athletic director, Kirby mentioned it. Nick Saban mentioned it. I mean, this is what everyone in the South was led to believe. This is going to be a fair playoff, and this is designed to say if you go out and challenge yourself with a schedule, unlike the past, 2 or 3 losses aren't going to kill you against some other teams that don't play anybody. Now, and that's wasn't how it ended up. But I will say this: I think some kind of this thought process with the seeding and SMU and all that may have crept in, protecting the championship games. Because if you set the precedent of dropping out a championship game loser, right, that was in your rankings before, because they boxed themselves into a corner by ranking SMU that freaking high to begin with.
Right. That was the first
Right?
mistake.
They boxed themselves in a corner with that. But if you start that precedent, like a lot of folks around the SEC and elsewhere said, if you start dropping out losers of championship games, there's going to be schools that don't want to play. And you're going to see some, well, gosh, if we win, we'll have to go to Atlanta and we may not be in. So should we really, I mean, what should we do here? You know, and you don't want that in college football because you want to protect. So if that was the line of thinking, I think that's stupid. And I think we need a better committee that uses common sense so they don't box themselves into these corners like that. However, I halfway understand that, you know, but I'm beside myself at how, I mean, I've seen a lot of crazy bad decisions in college football. You know, even Danny White, the AD at Tennessee, his team's in and he's lobbying for a home game, which I think he made a good point, you know, and he mentions just take the subjectivity out of it, go back to the BCS formula. And I'm all for that, Mike. With computers, you know, technology's come a long way. You could probably write an AI program that would do a better job than these guys. But I don't want to use the AP poll or the coaches poll because the problem with those polls is unga bunga, 1 loss, 2 loss, rank in order. Nobody wants to be wrong. So you can have a team that's god awful, that plays nobody, that squeaks by, and they're still ranked 5th. And meanwhile, you got Georgia behind them, and that makes no sense either. I don't know what necessarily needs to be done. But I'm tired of, I mean, this can't keep going on. You're right. It's not sustainable. And I just think at the end of the day, there needs to be a lot of soul searching. There needs to be people that know football on the committee. And we had an Oregon fan in chat row. He says Oregon got ripped off. Yeah, because you got to play Ohio State in the next round. Meanwhile, Penn State.
Yeah.
SMU and Boise, you know.
I didn't even dive into that yet because that's the next level of, oh crap, why did they do it this way? My first objective is just, can we get the right 12 teams in? And to just say one more thing on and we're way over time for a break, but one more thing on your SMU point. The committee, if you want to keep the conference championship games relevant, what the committee should have done. See, data point. SMU needed a win data point to get in. That's what they needed. So if you rank them properly before the ACC championship game, there would have been no lack of motivation for SMU to play in the game because they knew they would have had to have won it to get in. But you set yourself up to where their head coach is like, well, what if we all just got COVID and we sat it out? How about that? That obviously that's a bad look, but it never should have come down to that. You should have set it up differently. Those last 2 or 3 polls, like you said, they boxed themselves in. They painted themselves into a corner. No question about that. All right. I knew that first segment would be a lot to get out there. We still have plenty of stuff to get into and get out there. It's the JC5 right around the corner on JC and Morgan. Mike here for our friends at MG&A Wealth. It's never a bad time to have someone on your side for all your financial needs. You need a trustworthy partner who has a true understanding of your situation in order to help you with smart and practical solutions. Since 1984, MG&A Wealth has helped their clients manage not just their wealth, but their lives. Today, as a nationally recognized wealth management firm, their team of pros remains dedicated to serving your best interests with an emphasis on personal attention and customized solutions. MG&A Wealth has clients all across the country, and they all get results. Don't put it off any longer. Call our friends at MG&A Wealth at 954-289-9000. That's 954-289-9000. MGAwealth.com is the website. They do more than manage wealth. They help manage lives.
Morning, Carl. Usual?
Yeah.
Your oldest was in here the other day. Said the two of you took a trip down to my neck of the woods. How'd that go?
You might as well give me one of those Carolina cars while you're at it.
I knew I liked that one.
Yeah.
There you go, my friend.
Thanks.
Hey, Carl. Congratulations.
See you tomorrow, ready?
You bet.
We're passionate about making sure that the Nest and Wild mattress is the best it can be. Made well and made right. Right here in Tupelo, Mississippi. So how can we do all that? Work. Hard work. And that means something. The Nest and Wild mattress is a movement. It's a pride in where you come from and where you're going. So get comfortable, because this movement is just beginning.
Here's JC and Morgan.
Back with you on JC and Morgan, presented by the most comfortable mattress on the planet without premium prices, Nest and Wild. Visit nestandwild.com or go ahead and just give them a phone call. Brandon Jameson, the CEO, located in Tupelo, Mississippi. I'm actually going to be in Tupelo next week. I call a Mississippi State basketball game of all things. Never been to Tupelo, but I know Elvis has been. In fact, he was born there. Look forward to checking that out, as a matter of fact. You don't have to go to Tupelo to get your mattress. In fact, it's delivered right to your door. No matter where you're listening across the country, you will feel awfully good about sleeping on top of a cloud without sinking in, 5 layers, all the goodies that every supreme mattress has, but again, without paying $4,000 or $5,000 as some of these things go for. That's Nest and Wild, nestandwild.com. Before we dive into the JC5, let me just mention quickly, and I don't know who did this. This is the folks at On3. They went ahead and waited for all the computer polls to finalize, and this is what the BCS poll would have given you. Number 1, Oregon. Number 2, Georgia. 3, Notre Dame. 4, Texas. 5, Ohio State. 6, Penn State. 7, Tennessee. 8, Indiana. 9, Boise State. 10, Arizona State. 11, Alabama. 12, SMU. Followed by Clemson at 13. See, again, South Carolina at 14. So head-to-head matters when it does, but then it doesn't matter.
Well, they count the AP and coaches poll, which are garbage. I mean, that's like 50% of the BCS formula. So
right.
I don't care,
and I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, that's my point is because there's some they're still like, I missed the days of the BCS. Really? What do you miss about it?
Yeah, that's what Danny White was saying. Who I have a lot of respect for. They did at Tennessee. I think it's fine if you want to go back to a situation where you have computers and like we have the net in college basketball. There needs to be a better committee though, and there doesn't need the polls. The football polls, AP and coaches poll, need to go back to the way of like the dodo, just like the basketball polls. Leave them in for the media. You know, they're relevant, but the way they do it, you're not gonna get the best teams.
And remember the net. As much as I think it's actually a really good algorithm, that's not the final say. That is a guide. That's what the committee uses as a guide for close calls. But they don't sit there and go, well, whatever the net says, that's what we're going to do. But I just thought I'd throw that out there. There's never been a perfect poll constructed. So I am always in favor of a committee over just a computer spitting out who the teams are. But the committee has to be – I mean, we went over the 13 names. Come on. Can we just get people that cover the sport for a living? We can do much better, excuse me, much better with the committee. And I know it'll change somewhat next year, but it's going to be the same formula, which is we got to get our administrators and we got to get our former coaches and our former players, but we are not getting people that cover the sport year-round. That for whatever reason, they are purely against that. Let's dive into the JC5, shall we?
It's time for the top topics in the sport. We bring the JC5. Number 1.
All right. Going to take you down to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Reports indicate the leading candidate right now, for the open Tar Heels job is one Bill Belichick.
I'm sorry.
I laugh too, dude. I mean, I laugh, but then because I'm kind of nervous, laughed, intrigued, flabbergasted, wondering. I mean, I don't know, man. There's some rumors out there that his son Steve Belichick would come with him, and so maybe it's a
Succession plan,
handoff, succession plan kind of thing. I love Bill Belichick. I mean, his draft coverage. He's on with Pat McAfee and all those other dudes. We're talking about generational this, generational that, and he's like, I don't like any of these quarterbacks. I don't think any of them are that good. I was like, I love you, dude. Just no hype, no nonsense, no all ball. Pretty popular. Probably has some redeeming qualities, and seeing his girlfriend status right now, but I don't know that he's a complete like fuddy-duddy, but man, it would just be interesting. I mean, he's never coached in college football apparently, and I haven't confirmed this, so if I'm wrong, I apologize. It's I guess his dad coached at UNC way back in the day.
Oh, I did not know that.
And Chapel Hill.
Okay.
Because so I don't know, your thoughts on the GOAT from the NFL taking the Tar Heels job.
As someone who lives in Atlanta, my thoughts are Bill shouldn't even have been available because the Falcons should have hired him.
Oh, my God.
He wanted the Falcons job, and in their infinite wisdom, they hired Raheem Morris instead of Bill Belichick. You have the GOAT on one hand, or a guy that failed in Tampa and is basically a lifelong coordinator in the other. Let's go with Raheem Morris. That's why the Falcons are the Falcons. Look, this is one of those, you use the term caged animal syndrome hires. I almost feel like this qualifies with a different term. I just don't know what that is. Needless to say, outside the box is part of it. Because caged animal hire implies you are determined to get like the top guy on the board. Well, I don't think Bill Belichick for a college job is the top guy on the board. But it is something where if you're a Tar Heel fan, and I've been there many times, and I've called my fair share of games at Kenan Stadium, and I've seen their facility. They got a lot of things to like, but the results have never been anything to love. And as you know, JC, recruiting ain't bad in North Carolina. Charlotte's not that far from Chapel Hill, and that town produces a lot of players. Raleigh-Durham produces a lot of players. Facilities are there, as I mentioned, and you've got some tradition, not a lot, but you got some. Lawrence Taylor, Kelvin Bryant, most recently Drake May. I think Drake May's got a chance to be a really good player with the Patriots, speaking of Belichick. But everything they've tried, the young up-and-comer, the veteran guy, bringing back the one guy that had success, the feel-good vibes of Mac Brown, who was really good before he bailed for Texas. Seems like everything they've done, it just doesn't stick. So this is here we go. Let's try this for a new term. Oh hell, let's try something else. Or the hell with it hire. In other words, we just got to go unconventional because conventional ain't working. Every conventional hire we've made has not worked. We've gone young, we've gone old, we've gone good vibes, we've gone new horizons. Everything we've gone doesn't work. So I don't blame them for going for it. And if Belichick feels like nobody in the NFL is going to hire him, maybe he would take it. I just think we're about to see 7 to 10 NFL coaches get fired. And I can't imagine not one of them is going to pick up the phone and call Bill Belichick. So does Bill want to deal with the NIL and the portal and talking to the Ram Club?
Oh, man.
I just can't see that. Where am I going? Outer Banks? How long do I got to talk to these people?
What is a
45 minutes.
I don't know
about
sure
that.
about that.
Can we send an assistant coach? No, coach, they want you. It's $500 a dinner club. I'm gonna guess no. I'm gonna say no.
How about no?
To use your favorite Dr. Evil line. I'm gonna say no.
I'm as shocked as you are, but that seems to be the situation. So on to number 2.
Number 2.
Okay. No, number 2.
No,
All right.
it played. It played. I heard it.
I didn't hear it.
Phil, give another number
Number
2.
2.
Oh, there we go. I don't
There
know
we
why. I don't know what's going on here.
2 2s.
Okay, so back to the playoff, a big picture playoff. I mean, I think everybody like thought the buys may be a good idea, and then once they saw the buys, they were like, no. And I get it totally, and I think that's due. Do you think they go to 16 when they have a chance to expand? I feel like they should, but that's my question to you. Is that kind of the sweet spot? I'll say it for 2 reasons. I don't think teams, I mean, Georgia cares about a bye right now, but everybody else doesn't. And I think fans and administrators and stakeholders, I guess is a word these days, I think they're going to want these home games because they're still going to be quite a spectacle, especially with the Big Ten loving committee putting 3 of them in ice cold weather. We've never had that in this sport as far as playoffs go. I guess they're trying to prove a point, but to me, 16 is probably the right number, I think. Some years there's not 16 teams that deserve to go, to be honest, but hey, that's just kind of the way it goes. Your thoughts on the sweet spot for the number?
I think it's going to be 16. We're already committed to 14 in 2026. Why would they just keep it at 14? I don't. There's too much money out there, and with the more you expand the net, the less you have legitimate gripe sessions. I mean, even now, like I said, I'm not crying tears for a 3-loss Alabama team. Do I think they were better than SMU? Yes. When you get to 16 teams, if you don't make, it's like the NCAA basketball tournament. There's always that 1 or 2 bubble teams that are like, well, we have a great case here. And yeah, you could have won more. I'm sorry. I don't feel sorry for you. When you get to 16, am I going to be outraged over 17? No. Now, if I have to do a studio show and fill 8 hours on Selection Sunday, then maybe I'll find a gripe just because I have to. But no, I think we're going to 16. Tim Brando said as much when we had him on all the way back in the summer. I think moves like the one we just saw on Sunday pave the way for 16. And again, I think this thing, it's not going to get blown up entirely, but you just poked your thumb in the eye of one of the most powerful people in the sport. And I think the response is going to be, you're going to see more AQs, more AQ. The SEC is not going to go in there with one guaranteed spot every year and leave it up to a committee of 13 people that ignore strength of schedule and other important metrics. I think you're going to see 16 with a lock of at least 4 for the SEC and the Big Ten.
I think that number should be 5 for the SEC. I think that's the sweet spot.
Well, that I mean, I don't argue with you that they might.
and they need more than the Big Ten, but I'm
not arguing that either. I just don't think that the Big Ten's going to sit there and go, well, okay, since you're the SEC, we'll give you one more.
Yeah, if I think about it, if you expanded to 16 and all the other garbage teams got in that didn't play anybody, Illinois, I could make a case for them as being like a 15-16, in my opinion. So anyway, yeah. All right, on to number 3.
Number 3.
Okay. So, better coaching job this year, Mike. Kenny Dillingham, Kurt Signetti, or Clark Lee?
Great question.
I know, dude.
I swear you come up with these things, and I think part of the joy that you have of the JC5 is just to make me sweat, and that one did. And by the way, I did a deep dive on Kenny Dillingham last week. I'm going to do a deep dive on Rhett Lashley last segment of the show today, as these guys deserve a little more exposure. I'm going Dillingham. By the way, I won't say the name, but somebody on a studio show said, if Deion Sanders is not your coach of the year, and he had to be corrected, he coaches in the same league as Kenny Dillingham, They were picked 16th, and they just won the league and going to the playoff. Perhaps he deserves the vote. Yeah, like I get it. Team Deion, they don't have to see the rest of the world. It's a parochial. Here's what I know. We love Deion. We're gonna politic for Deion on everything. No, Dillingham is your Big 12 Coach of the Year, and he might be your National Coach of the Year. But all the names you mentioned have done outstanding jobs. They absolutely have. And you could throw Rhett Lashley's name. Did you have him in there? I can't remember. I'm sorry.
How about no?
Yeah. Well,
He didn't play anybody.
I know. I get it. But I mean, he did. If you take his whole body of work since he took that job, he has done one hell of a job.
I think he's a hell of a coach.
He is.
I honestly do. So, no, I just didn't throw him in there.
But
because we expected them to at least compete.
We did. Nobody saw Arizona State coming. Nobody saw Cam Scattaboo coming. That's like something you get at like some random wing joint in a college town in the MAC. I'll get the Cam Scattaboo lemon pepper, please. That to me is as good a story as there is in college football. Arizona State, if you've ever been there, there's no reason why they can't be a power again in college football. The Frank Kush days, the Danny White days, more recently the Jake Plummer days. But they've had some really questionable hires, and for whatever reason, they haven't been able to find the sweet spot. But he'd be my guy.
Yeah, number 4.
On Arizona State quickly, most coaches call that a sleeping giant. The campus is good. They actually have a lot of fans, tradition.
Yeah.
That type of thing. The Pat Tillman thing. They go preseason camp. They go up to northern Arizona and practice. So they actually have a Junction Boys. It's not as tough as the Junction Boys, obviously. Let's be honest. They recruit California. Okay,
I knew the Bear. I talked to the Bear. You ain't the Bear, boy.
But it's a tremendous tremendous situation. Couldn't be happier for that group of fans. Number 4. All right, so bowl games. There's some intriguing matchups. There's some that, here we go again, Missouri and Iowa and Nashville. I'm like, how many times can we see Iowa play in Nashville? I think some of these Big Ten SEC games are getting really stale, just to be honest, because they've been doing this for about 34 years. I mean, they're, with these Big Ten SEC things. So my question to you is to spice it up a little bit. And this is one of the things when Sankey and Petitti, speaking of Nashville, did meet in Nashville, they talked about bowl games and of course, the Big Ten Challenge. Should we go back to the days where, with everything else besides the playoff, just let the bowls and the schools kind of work it out, because it used to be, hey, you're on our radar for the bowl, and we're going to come by, and I want 100 cocktail weenies in the press box for me and a case of beer, and we may like you enough to invite you. And how many tickets can you guarantee, and all that good stuff. I know it's different now because a lot of these are made for TV productions. Even if we included ESPN in there, should we maybe, spice things up a little bit? And I think the ratings are still going to stay because it's college football over the holidays. But, for fans in general, interest for the people that built the sport, for the people that put the money in the sport, i.e. the fans, it's getting a little stale. So what do you think? Should we just go back to the free-for-all?
Good question. I hadn't really thought about it too much. My biggest concern every year now is the opt-outs. And I'm looking at some of these matchups, and I'm encouraged because typically if you've got a quarterback in his last year that's going to be a high draft pick, there's your opt-out. I know Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette kind of got this whole thing started, and they were running backs. But if I've got my quarterback playing, then I still feel like it can be a competitive game, unless the entire defense opts out or something like that. But when I look at it, JC, let's just look and start with SEC terms. Like Florida's got DJ Lagway. He's playing because he's coming back. So I think then their top receiver, the Badger kid, he's playing. So it seems like they're engaged. South Carolina, huge game for that program to be in Orlando. And, of course, Lenora Sellers, who was the talk of the sport for at least a week, the Clemson game, he's playing. And, so there's not like a lack of buy-in for Colorado, the Alamo Bowl, Shador, Travis Hunter, they're playing. So these are non-playoff teams. I realize Luther Burnett bowed out for Missouri. There's always going to be a couple of those, but I haven't heard many other bow outs for Mizzou. So if you don't have the players opting out, they're actually, LSU. I haven't heard anything about Nussmeier not playing. Like they're in. That's all I ask. I don't care so much about the matchup, the location. Nobody's going to remember who beat who beat whom, for all you grammar guys out there. I understand. Outside of the two fan bases, nobody's going to remember or care about the game itself a couple of years from now. But as you mentioned, and as I've pointed out 100 times over, these are made for TV events. And for the teams, it's no longer, remember it used to be, well, you get those 15 practices and those are real. These teams don't go that hard anymore. This is the anti-Junction Boys. It's about getting your swag bag. Yeah, you'll have some practices and that's valuable, but they don't go nearly as hard as they used to go, even as recently as like a Lou Holtz, where you're banging your full pads, or you're teaching toughness. And they don't do that anymore. If you want kids to race to the portal, then really bust your ass on those 15 bowl practices. So they're made for TV events. They're entertaining. I always get a kick out of, the Mark Packer segment of the world, the hot take for 20 years. We have too many bowl games. Well, then don't watch. They all do well ratings-wise. They all make money. Nobody's locking you to a chair like Clockwork Orange and pinning up your eyelids so you can't do anything but watch what's on the screen. Don't watch.
Clockwork Orange.
You like that one?
I love it. That was that was good.
I just thought of that. I haven't seen that movie in 20 years. If you don't want to watch Western Michigan, South Alabama take part in the Veterans Bowl, then don't watch it. It's okay. It's all right. I'm a little biased. I've had a chance to call a lot of these tier 2, tier 3 bowl games, and I've loved every minute of it. And I will tell you this. There is never an issue with opt-outs or portal controversy on those lower-level games because those kids, they don't have those kind of options. They truly are playing for the love of the game in so many respects. So I know that I might have ducked and dodged your question somewhat, but I'm just all about what I like fresher matchups, I'm with you. I don't need to see the same conferences and the same bowl games every single time. But I don't know if it's avoidable with the way they are lined up right now.
Well, I mean, so here's my point. So look at the Gator Bowl. Ole Miss and Duke. All right, so everybody, there we go. The ACC is so freaking bad that Duke went 9-3 again with a first-year coach that couldn't win at Miami or anywhere else. All right, 9-3. All right, so they're in the Gator Bowl. And Ole Miss, how excited are those? I mean, you want to talk about opt-outs? Keep an eye on those guys because there could be many. So is that fair to their? Because if you want fans and everybody to care, players to care about the game, how exciting though would it be if the Gator Bowl, Mike, was Ole Miss and Colorado?
Yeah.
Everybody tune in for that one.
Absolutely.
All right. So Miami's got to go to the Pop-Tarts Bowl and play Iowa freaking State. I think's making their like 4 out of 5 years they've been in the Pop-Tarts Bowl in Orlando. Good bowl, right? How cool
formerly
would it be?
The Cheez-It Bowl.
Formerly the Cheez-It Bowl, formerly the Tangerine Bowl. There's 3 bowls in Orlando. This is the number 2 one. So South Carolina's played Illinois in the Citrus. Now, Illinois hadn't been anywhere like that in a long time. They went to Outback a couple of years ago, and that's the biggest bowl they've been in since 2001 when they played in the Sugar Bowl against LSU, against that Rohan Davey, Nick Saban team that when we first started learning about Nick Saban that year. So that's 23 years. They're excited. Gamecocks are excited. They hadn't been to that bowl. They've only been 3 times, 3rd time, and they haven't been in a while, so I get it. But how much more exciting would it be for South Carolina to play Miami in that bowl? or for Alabama to play Miami in that bowl. And for South, and then South Carolina play, name your other team that was in the hunt late. I mean, there's just more, and the conferences are so big anyway. Or hey, maybe even it's a conference game. If you didn't play anybody, let South Carolina play Alabama in a bowl. That'll get a crowd. I mean, or let, so that's my thing. If they truly want to solve, they do this in the sport. They cut off their nose to spite their face. If you want to have bowl games and want to have interest, you have to understand it's gotten stale. I was in high school when the Bowl Alliance first came out, and they first started having SEC tie-ins to the Outback and Citrus. And it's always a Big Ten team. How many times, and even the people in Tampa are probably like, good God, Iowa, Michigan's coming again, Florida. Who we got? Michigan, Alabama. That's a big couple of brand. But I mean, Michigan, Alabama is at least interesting. It's a rematch from last year. But they could just do so much better. Colorado didn't have to go to the Alamo Bowl. They could go on to the Citrus Bowl. They were 9-3. I mean, so a BYU and somebody. I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of talking out loud here.
I don't know. I don't know why we have to have conference tie-ins. I'm with you. Like, you could just do it like a draft and just let the top bowl games pick the best teams that they want to have.
Wink, wink, nod. Yeah, I mean, that beautiful, a draft.
Yeah.
Mike Morgan, that's a genius idea. It'll never happen because it's college.
It'll never happen, but it's my Pollyannish thinking coming out. But yeah, I mean, why not do it that way? And hell, you can, while you're doing 8 hours of just regurgitating the same thoughts on Alabama versus SMU, you could start right into the bowl draft and watch some guy at a podium with a suit that actually fits and talking about what teams go. All right, then with the first pick, here is the Capital One Bowl, or here is the whatever bowl, and just let them pick the team. I think that'd be great TV too. We'd actually care about the selection process. All right, number 5.
Yeah, I'm with you. 4 hours of coverage yesterday on the Worldwide Leader. I'm not an ESPN hater at all. I mean, I find myself I'm older. I'm getting to the old man yells at cloud age. So I'm starting to hate everything. Yeah, Heather Dinich. Yeah, Joey Galloway.
Because again, you don't have to watch, right? That's
I didn't watch a minute.
I was in my car for 6 hours yesterday, so it killed some time.
I watched Reese Davis announce the bracket because you can hear in Reese Davis's voice he was extremely unimpressed with this. Totally. I mean, you could just tell. And he's not going to upset the apple cart. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a mind reader. But I watched him announce the bracket. I listened to what Saban had to say. And that was it.
Everybody does.
And
Kirk, E.F. Hutton of that panel.
I do have one thing to say, though, about the producer. Maybe you can talk to somebody about this for me.
I'll make a phone call.
Kirk Herbstreit looked like he was on the freaking Death Star. I don't know what kind of background he had. Somebody pointed this out on Twitter. Kirk Herbstreit live from the Death Star. And I'm like, it does look just like the set from the Death. Maybe it is. Maybe he's got that in his background. I don't know. And another thing I'll mention before we get to the next thing. If you're a Florida State fan and you attacked Kirk Herbstreit publicly last year, shame on you. I mean, you're a loser. I mean, that guy, I think it went way too far based on his reaction on TV. I mean, way too far, because normally you take criticism, man. If you can't take the heat, I mean, Kirk gets paid really well, but he was shaking a little bit, and just kind of his body language. It made me uncomfortable. So whatever you did on Twitter to be mean to Kirk Herbstreit in a personal manner, you deserve to go 2-10 this year if you're one of those Knowles.
Well, he got that from his own fan base years ago when he commented on Ohio State and the whole tattoo gate. And he didn't say what the alumni wanted him to say, and he was getting death threats. And he said, "You know what? Peace out." He used to do a talk show. My former producer used to produce his show in Columbus, Ohio. Here's a prodigal son living in the town that he played college ball for. And when after that all that happened, you know what he did? Peace out. I'm moving to Nashville.
I know, with his family. I mean, this guy's a good family man. I don't think Kirk Herbstreit necessarily. I don't think he's controversial, dude.
No, he's not a hot take guy.
No, he just calls it like it is, and he's honest.
Yes.
And, nobody agrees with everybody on everything, but the venom directed toward him over that is ridiculous. And then he has, I'm just gonna kind of. I mean, if it didn't bother him, he probably wouldn't mention it. So number one, get him off the Death Star. Number two, people leave him alone. There's so many more hot take artists who have agendas and who are just wrong, and their opinion is based on something that they want something.
Okay, I did love what Kirk said. And I was driving, so I had it on my phone. I could only sneak a peek. I hope the highway patrol isn't listening, but yes, I did sneak a peek every now and then to see the reaction of the panel while I was on cruise control at a very safe level and abiding by all the laws of I-75. What I noticed right off the bat when they brought him in, so Booger McFarland says, well, I think the committee had it right. They had a choice of going either brand name or resume. And, big brand versus most deserving is the way he put it. And Kirk basically pushed back and said, I don't know what you're talking about. That's really not the way they roll. Like, that's not what this is about. Alabama's got a legitimate case. And then Booger came back and said, well, it was a moment of levity. I was trying to be funny about it. Yeah, I mean, that was, if they chose Alabama, it wasn't just strictly because of brand name. It was because of that 27 metrics would favor them over SMU. But anyway,
127, dude, yeah. Probably. So,
all right, is that all five? I think it's five, right? Yes.
Yeah, I don't have anything else written down.
All right, five down. We'll take a final timeout. We'll come back. We'll do a deep dive as promised, and the final G5 John of the season, anyway, with an update on how the Group 5 fared and will fare moving towards the future. Final timeout here on JC and Morgan. Mike here for our friends at MG&A Wealth. It's never a bad time to have someone on your side for all your financial needs. You need a trustworthy partner who has a true understanding of your situation in order to help you with smart and practical solutions. Since 1984, MG&A Wealth has helped their clients manage not just their wealth, but their lives. Today, as a nationally recognized wealth management firm, their team of pros remains dedicated to serving your best interests with an emphasis on personal attention and customized solutions. MG&A Wealth has clients all across the country, and they all get results. Don't put it off any longer. Call our friends at MG&A Wealth at 954-289-9000. That's 954-289-9000. MGAwealth.com is the website. They do more than manage wealth. They help manage lives.
Morning, Carl. Usual?
Yeah.
Your oldest was in here the other day. Said the two of you took a trip down to my neck of the woods. How'd that go?
You might as well give me one of those Carolina cars while you're at it.
I knew I liked that one.
Yeah.
There you go, my friend.
Thanks.
Hey, Carl. Congratulations.
See you tomorrow, ready?
You bet.
We're passionate about making sure that the Nest and Wild mattress is the best it can be. Made well and made right. Right here in Tupelo, Mississippi. So how can we do all that? Work. Hard work. And that means something. The Nest and Wild mattress is a movement. It's a pride in where you come from and where you're going. So get comfortable. Because this movement is just beginning.
Here's JC and Morgan.
We install the additional board. Time for Thornton Mellon and Company to do the triple Indy as we take a deep dive. We did it on Dillingham a week ago. How about Rhett Lashley? It feels like Lashley's name has been circulating for years in college football, but for whatever reason, he didn't really get that big job that everybody thought he was kind of destined to have. He's still relatively young, about 40, 41 years old. He obviously has ties to Arkansas, born in Springdale, Arkansas. Played his college football at the University of Arkansas as a quarterback from 2002 to 2004. And prior to SMU, he had various assistant coaching positions at Springdale High, Arkansas, Auburn, Samford, Arkansas State, University of Connecticut, SMU, and the University of Miami. He got his big break with Gus Malzahn. Those two seem to be kind of fused at the hip, and worked with him for a number of years, both in high school and at the collegiate level. And he kind of just bounced around, though. It was like, when is he going to get his big shot? He goes to Samford. He goes to Arkansas State as an offensive coordinator. In 2012, he gets hired at Auburn. He's their OC and quarterbacks coach following Gus after his return to Auburn 1 year after Arkansas State. He was a finalist for the Broyles Award while he was at Auburn. Then he goes to UConn. It's the OC there, then SMU, OC there, then Miami, OC there. And then finally SMU says, let's give this guy a shot. And in year one, they go 7-6, go to the New Mexico Bowl. In year two, they go 11-3, 8-0 in the conference. Of course, that's a different conference. And they go to the Fenway Bowl. They finish 24th in the country. And then, of course, this year, first year in the ACC. And what do? They run the gamut, albeit with a weaker conference slate, to be fair. 8-0, 11-2 overall, and they're in the playoff. Congratulations to him. Again, I root for stories like this. I love grinders, JC. I like guys that nothing's handed to them. They pay their dues. They take a lot of low-level jobs. They constantly have to move their family and finally get their big break, and he's made the most of it.
Yes. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
The Gus Malzahn coaching tree is starting to pop a little bit. His OC back when he was at Springdale, right before he jumped to Arkansas, was one Eli Drinkwitz. So Eli's 49-25, and Missouri could win 10 again after 11-2 last year. Good coach, funny, like him. And then Rhett Lashley has done a really good job. I think some folks, because he was kind of, he was with Malzahn at Auburn, and he kind of got blamed for a lot because there was a point at Auburn where nobody knew who was calling plays. It was either Malzahn, oh, I'm not calling them. Well, this guy's calling them. Well, that, and Rhett got caught up in that. And then he goes to Miami, and good God, how many good coordinators have gone to Miami, and whatever happens. So thanks, he's thankful that he got the SMU job, and I think SMU's thankful to have him. I got a couple of contacts out at SMU, and they were actually worried if Pittman retired or got let go at Arkansas this year that they would lose Lashley to the Hogs. And that's going to be there's a lot of people that are angling for that job. But,
yeah.
And look, and if you're a Sam Pittman fan, and I am, it's nothing against him. I'm not saying fire him. I think it's going to take a lot to get coaches fired moving forward until we get on the other side of this revenue sharing thing that's coming July 1st. Athletic departments take in a lot of money, folks, but they spend every penny they got. It's budgeted. They budget years in advance. So they got to come up with an extra $20 million. Nobody can afford buyouts. So it's not going to be rare if a guy, there's going to be very few situations like Jimbo Fisher where he's 8-4 and he gets bought out at $75 million. That's just not that's not going to be the case for a while. So I do think it's interesting though, because there's a lot of other former assistants for Malzahn too out there, but that have kind of gotten coordinator jobs here and there and been okay. But Rhett Lashley, Eli Drinkwitz are the guys that kind of stand out.
Yeah, it's you brought up an excellent point. Like, you think about it, if it wasn't for that $21 million invoice about to be handed to every athletic department, would Sam Pittman still be in Fayetteville? Would Billy Napier still be in Gainesville? And dare I say, would Mark Stoops still be in Lexington? You're going to have 0 coaches fired in the SEC, which is a rarity. But the economics, it's a little bit different now.
Yeah,
with what the budget's going to look like.
Because the disappointing guys just have just about all of them. Pittman's buyout, I think, is the most reasonable because he kind of latched it to performance. And, I think he actually got enough wins for it to be up there. But everybody else, Freeze, Venable, anybody's talked about firing this year, it's not going to happen. And fans got to get used to this too, man. One bad year is not going to do a coach in anymore. I mean, even if it's later in his tenure, it's going to have to be a complete disaster. If Kentucky did not, and there's probably a lot that goes into the Mark Stoops situation, but if Kentucky didn't move on after they bottomed out, that tells you something. Because that situation too, yes, he's been there. Yes, he's the winningest coach of all time. Yes, he deserves it. But it's felt kind of stale, like you've mentioned, a marriage. You stay together for the kids, that kind of thing. So that if that didn't happen, it's going to take a lot. Fans are going to have to get used to that because they're going to be like, fire, fire, fire. You may see coordinators like you're having at Florida State, but you're probably going to see head coaches get a little bit longer leash. Well, I say one more part of it with the transfer portal and everything. If you get to the point where you got to blow it up and start over, you don't have to sit there and wait. There's probably going to be no such thing as a 3-4 year rebuild as long as you have money to go spend. Yeah. So it's that there's the trade off for it. Yeah, you're going to keep guys longer, but when you fire him, you can bring in a new guy, and he's probably he could come in and win right away.
Well, and SMU is a classic example of that. I mean, that is a portal-laden team, and they went out. Not only did they tell the ACC, no, don't worry about we got your stinking TV money. We'll take care of it. They also went out and they were heavy players in the portal, including a lot of Miami guys that old Rhett took from Coral Gables and said, "Hey, why don't you give suburban Dallas a shot and have some fun over here?" And it's worked out pretty well. And to your other point, yeah, this has been the year of the fired coordinator. I don't know what the grand total is, but it's a lot. So they're not firing head coaches as much as they used to. But again, I'll go back to the glossary here. The get out of jail free card. When you want to make a point and you want to say it's not the head coach's fault, just lay it all on the coordinator and fire his ass, and then bring another one in. And there's a lot of teams are doing that in like week 5. Let's just fire the coordinator. Okay. I don't know if it solved much, but that happened. Quickly, before we sign off here and let you listen to some other great programs on the Chief Network, including ITG. I know a lot of our chat row people are waiting for that one anxiously. The G5 playoff spot, of course, Boise State, not only the Mountain West champs, but the number 3 seed. That's going to change. I will say this. I watched that Mountain West championship game. I got to send in my Heisman ballot today, and Genty made another strong case in that game. What a year that he has put together. Yep. He's going to break Barry Sanders' record in all likelihood.
And I forgot to mention, Barry Odom got the Purdue job.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go Purdue, Pete. Yeah.
The fighting Barry. Does that mean you're going to start wearing a Purdue visor?
I can't. Purdue's mascot terrifies me, dude. And I was actually, I respect Barry Odom. I'm more kind of like.
You love Barry Odom.
I do, because he won at UNLV, and I've always thought UNLV was a job where they're terrible, but it had potential. I don't have a lot of faith they're going to replace him with anybody good, but I respect him for that. I always thought he got a kind of a raw deal at Missouri. He's really good, but that Purdue job, unless they've got money buried in the cornfield, that's a tough gig right now.
Purdue Kenny, man, we're pulling for you. We'd love to see the days of relevance back in Purdue football. Jim Everett, Drew Brees, bring them all back. The G5 champions, Conference USA. How about Rich Rodriguez, Jacksonville State over Western Kentucky? What a job by Rich Rod. Ohio won the MAC. Marshall won the Sun Belt. Seems like Marshall and Louisiana are battling for that trophy just about every year.
Marshall's coach left for Southern Miss too.
He sure did, yeah. He's a guy with Saban ties at Alabama. So, what does that say about Marshall? Southern Miss has been in a financial pitfall for years, and they won the bidding war, or did he just rather be in Hattiesburg than Huntington? I've been to both. I don't know. There's Huntington's got mountains, and Hattiesburg's got barbecue. I don't know how you make that decision. Army won the American over Tulane. That's a great story. I'm not complaining, but I had an offer. It was all set, JC, to go to the Army Navy game this year. Hotel, tickets, the whole 9 yards. Got a phone call last week. I'm doing some basketball that weekend, so it's still on the bucket list. I still will make it. Can't wait to watch it, but I won't be attending it. Commander-in-Chief Trophy, Army Navy. Army's a 5.5-point favorite. That game is in the Landover. Navy leads the all-time series, 62-55, with 7 ties mixed in. Army's won the last 2. And yes, Ashton Genty with another 209 yards against a stacked box. I mean, you got to remember, folks, every scouting report says just stack the box and don't let that guy beat you. And every week he goes out and he beats you. 209 yards against UNLV. Barry Odom, as you mentioned, a great defensive mind. It didn't matter. He's got 2,500 yards, 30 touchdowns in 13 games. He's going to become the all-time single-season leader, in all likelihood, surpassing one Barry Sanders. So congratulations to him. He'll certainly be on a lot of Heisman ballots, which are due later on today. Our thanks again to Mad Dog Phil Molinax, to all of you tuning in. JC, some words of wisdom for those that haven't already. I just had a really nice comment from somebody saying that they only listen to like 3 podcasts overall, and this one is their favorite. Just loves the college football that we bring, and we really, really appreciate it. I know that sounds just kind of trite, but we do. We understand there's more and more people in this space, and you choose to tune us in each and every week, and we thank you for that. And we welcome more into the pool of JC and Morgan listeners and viewers.
Yeah, if you're following on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button. It's free. It helps us. It helps get our message out. This and our other shows on Chief Sports, also the Chief Sports app. Also, we're in podcast format on Spotify, Apple, Audible, iHeart, Google Play, Podbean, Podcast Mania. Thanks, an app. I mean, anywhere you get podcasts, you can get JC and Morgan. So we certainly appreciate all of our old school podcast listeners, that style, because we used to never go live. We used to record it, that have been with us since day one. Back in 2016, this is our ninth college football season doing this. So we'll be celebrating 10 years when the season kicks off next year, when I'll be at Mike's house in Atlanta over Labor Day weekend in his hot tub with a cold one for the South Carolina Virginia Tech opener. But no,
the neighbors will look forward to that party.
Hey, they'll be like, guess who's back?
Guess who's back in town? Lo and behold.
Anyway, but it's a pleasure to talk with everybody. It's a pleasure to do this podcast. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but it's been good, and onward and upward. We continue to grow and get more audience, and appreciate all you guys listening from all fan bases.
Amen from top to bottom. We'll do the 10-year anniversary show like in Maui or something at a resort. I'm sure we can get our sales staff right on that. That's it for us, folks. Thanks again. We'll see you next week again. We do not pause for any time of the year. JC and Morgan will be back with you next week. Until then, for Phil, for JC, Mike saying so long. Have a great rest of the day, great rest of the week.